Bum, 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 bum. We need some more theme music.
Dude, we do. Music's expensive, though. Why don't we have Mark or one of you guys, like you have so many friends that are like famous musicians. Why don't you have one of those fuckers make us something?
You could get that done this weekend. In fact, you have two choices.
There we go. We do have two choices.
What are the two?
So let's just go with the name drop. Potentially Friday in Austin, I'm going to hang with Steve Droz of the Flaming Lips. He and I
of course you are.
He and I grew up together. And then Saturday, going to head to Shiner, Texas to see Lindsay L play.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
I was trying to think. Okay. I've seen Lindsay play since the Crawfish Boil. The Digital Wildcatters Crawfish Bowl in the spring of 21.
Freaking
Lindsay
awesome,
said
man.
that was the first cornhole tournament she had ever played in her career. But she did.
Is she now a consistent cornholer? Is that what you call them? What do you call them? Chuck? Mark?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Are you a cornholer? I'm not.
Washers. Washers and horseshoes.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. I guess we're going to talk oil again. It seems like this is our weekly thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So go back 2 weeks. I said oil's fairly valued. It's going to go down and all that. And what has it done since? Gone up.
It's gone up. Yeah. We actually made bets on it.
Yeah. So I lost.
Yeah, I got
losing
again.
Yes. Got a little B12 shot from the People's Bank of China last night. So fiscal stimulus signaled couple of things. One, potential for a 25 to 50 BIP rate cut, and also lowering reserve requirements for banks, which I think I recall correctly is freeing up upwards of $150 billion of credit for consumers and businesses. But the author of Commodity Context, which I got wrong last week for Rory Johnston, just tweeted out, give me good old fashioned construction demand to drive diesel demand, not fiscal stimulus, because there's some analysts believe that, there's going to be a pretty tepid demand response on the credit side from both businesses and consumers in China. So a bit of a tenuous positive, if you will, for the overhang that has been Chinese demand on crude. Plus, we got a couple of other things. There's another hurricane.
Well, let's go back for a second. Number one, you're wearing pro-China red hat today, which I appreciate. Question: China is the best in the world at playing head fakes and making everyone think things are going great. What is this signal to you? Are they prepping for the long term here, or what is this? What do you think this is really about?
So it's the glass half full versus glass half empty. It appears to be a bit more maneuvering or threading the needle on trying to get back to a 5% growth target, which seems to be a bit of a struggle, which has been evident in the commentary and the analysis over the past few months. They're trying to arrest some of the deflationary trend that they've been on. It doesn't feel like there's this fundamental pivot on industrial activity or construction activity, as Rory.
But the coal plants, the 1 or 2 a week, are still going strong. Do we have any? Yeah, from an energy perspective, China's building. It's just you're talking about more consumer construction.
Well, what does it mean relative to the demand side of oil demand and supply? And we've talked about inventories being the fundamental indicator that don't really matter right now because there's all these external things going on, not the least of which is U.S. election. But structurally, where is Chinese demand from just their dominant share of oil demand growth over the last 15 years? Is that materially cooling off? And that's the real fly in the ointment here as it relates to fundamentals.
So guys, I have the solution for this. Next Monday, when we record BDE, we'll have Mark Rosano on. He is an expert on all things China. He's been saying since 21, the Chinese consumer is tapped out. They're over levered. They don't have the money to spend. And so I think what he's going to tell us is great. Make money cheaper in China. That's not going to fix anything. So he's kind of the China bear.
So we basically set him up for this.
Yeah, well, we teed him up for coming in and correcting us.
Dude, what's up with the hurricane? What's going on there?
What's the off the Yucatan and Hurricane Alley? There's a track that I saw, and I guess it's to be named Helene, is projected to kind of cut a swath through the central Gulf and projected landfall right now. And I saw intensity estimates as high as category 3, but right in that pocket where the Florida panhandle turns south into the Florida peninsula.
And I mean, they're saying right now it's like not even a gusting wind, but this is all going to happen in the next 48 hours, right? It's going to potentially hit a hurricane.
For what it's worth, I heard some commentary on it, MLB radio, about the series that Atlanta's playing, I guess, starting today, and maybe having to adjust that schedule because they're worried about tropical storm effects in Atlanta. So
all I know is
it's going to get there pretty quickly. I couldn't find it on the weather app that I use in terms of the track, but
I heard from the Jewel Melissa Etheridge tour that is currently in Tampa and potentially heading to Clearwater, that logistics are being looked at because of the various things.
This one seems to have spun up pretty quickly.
All you have to do is follow my fellow surfers, and they're heading to the Texas coast. There's going to be some good surf. So we hope the wind picks up from a surf perspective. Of course, we don't hope that it does any damage. The question is I was at the Astros game months ago when freaking every window in downtown was blown out, and that was just a little squall that came out of nowhere. So what's up, man?
What was that, a derecho?
What was it? I don't even know.
But
Remember when like just a storm picked up and blew windows out, and now it was gone in 2 hours
and wrecked a few transmission line supports.
Just about 8 of the.
That was the tornadic part of it.
8 out of the 12 largest transmission lines were knocked down.
And I still, not that I'm rooting for this because I wish peace upon the world, I truly do, but I still just don't understand how bombs going off and feeling like we're on the verge of World War III in the Middle East is not causing something to happen in the oil markets. I mean, it used to be back in the day. I mean, that was a good $10 bump right there if a bomb went off.
Well, I think this very recent escalation, the precision response from Israel, the pager attacks, et cetera, is
my question
having a non-zero influence, but proportional to what we used to see. It's a mere blip.
This is not getting off topic for a second, but like, how did they hide bombs in all these pagers and get them distributed? I mean, that's kind of logistically unbelievable when you think about it.
Yeah.
So the numbers were big.
Yeah. I mean, they created a company that literally got into that business, right? Is that aren't those the words that are coming out?
Man.
And yeah.
I guess they intercepted a Hezbollah intelligence report on the statistics of numbers killed and injured and what types of injuries were inflicted. So, take that for what it's worth, but it was pretty wide scale.
Yeah.
So you think the current escalation in the region is already built into current oil prices?
Well, I think the dominant effect has been clarity on Chinese demand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the disconnect between what's going on physically with inventories and having crude have a big air pocket here recently, it's back to the fundamentals don't matter right now.
So I'll go back to saying, since it's always the opposite of whatever I'll say fairly valued but heading down. and we'll get a rally in crude so everybody can send me their Christmas bonus since I caused this. And I guess we'll check in next week on oil too. We'll just become the weekly.
We got every week to just talk about oil.
Yeah.
But I saw something come across the blotter yesterday. Why is Exxon being picked on again? What's happening there, Mark?
The state of California, the California AG has filed a lawsuit, and it's basically claiming very similar to the years and years of climate litigation that has been filed against Exxon. They knew more than they disclosed. And this has to do primarily with, Exxon, I believe, is the largest producer of resins that go into making single-use plastics, for example.
Yeah.
But basically the contention is that they are overstating the impact of recycling. Their pyrolysis technology and conventional recycling, in that,
overstating the positive impact or negative.
Yeah. And so the process, whatever it is, has been admittedly slow to develop and commercialize, but there's, I think there's a broader view that there's a disconnect between what Exxon, at least what the contention is, there's a disconnect between what Exxon has been saying the impact is going to be versus what's actually happened. And so, just another front of litigation. And this is really leading up to, I don't know what the timeline is here, but there's a building negotiation over a global plastics treaty. We've talked about plastics before as being, really
that's actually really bad.
A pollution issue that I think everybody can get on board with.
Yeah, everybody could spend money, and hey, Philippines, cut that shit out.
I mean, having traveled the world looking at pyrolysis technologies, I can tell you it's a fucking bad process. I mean, all you do is you take plastics and you heat it up and try to melt it down and do stuff. But the problem is when you get trash, it has other shit like metal in it. And when you put that metal inside of one of these pyrolysis machines, it breaks the machine. So it's a real ugly process, but it's not really the United States that's the problem. It's the third world countries that just dump plastics into the rivers and the oceans. I mean, that's the real issue that no one wants to talk about.
It's like, you
look at the famous photo of the giant plastic island that's in the Pacific, and the vast majority of contribution by group of countries is from Southeast Asia.
Absolutely.
I think Philippines being the largest.
Philippines is like the big one. And then there's supposedly, 7 rivers in China that people just throw their trash and the rivers feed. So you've got China, that's a big problem. India is a little bit of a problem.
Big problem, actually. Yeah. But here's my question. The AG of California, I mean, he's trying to fight the good fight, but at the same time, they're sort of gearing up to be the next Hindenburg storage facility. I mean, so I just read what's happening there. That they're.
Well, it caught my attention because John Arnold put out a tweet, and he said presented without comment. So basically, there's an approval for the construction of a hydrogen hub in Port Stockton in Northern California. And I think that approval is fairly recent, maybe 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And in the span of 21 days, there's a nonprofit law organization who's filed complaint on behalf of the Center for Biological Diversity and the Sierra Club, of course, to block it. And the crux issue is that, it's dirty hydrogen. And so
it's dirty hydrogen.
It's a company out of New Mexico. It's the project sponsor, Biotech. And you read down in the article, and lo and behold, they're using steam reforming.
Yeah, it's the original
hydrogen
process.
Well, it's
been around for a long time.
Most commercially viable, et cetera, and lowest cost. So there's related to mostly local community impacts. I think the facility is going to be anywhere from 4,600 to 7,200 feet from residences and an elementary school. And so the follow-up comment was that he replied to his own tweet was something to the effect of raising the notion again of energy permitting reform. This is another anecdote where you've got, a major hurdle from an approval standpoint and permitting approval to get something done that is ostensibly, certainly in the renewables or cleaner bucket of what we're trying to do with transition and the IRA. But you've got on the ground local opposition, environmental opposition groups, which make it very difficult to actually get these projects done and on the ground and operating within any reasonable
So regulators push through a permitting process quickly because it looks good. When I think hydrogen, I think Hindenburg. And when I think Hindenburg, I think Goodyear blimp. Do y'all know what happened to the Goodyear blimps? Do y'all remember the story?
Yeah, there used to be one up in
Conroe.
I know. You should drive by it every time we drive north. Do you know who bought those?
Who?
You know the guy that sort of formed like the Backstreet Boys, the guy that went to prison?
Oh, yeah, the child molester,
that guy,
basically.
He bought all of the Goodyear blimps and set them on fire so he could get insurance money so he could start the boy band gig.
No way. Really?
Yeah, that's the story. So we'll confirm
that way.
So we're going to confirm that story because that's sort of where we're leading. This hydrogen hub is just a red herring, but it could blow up on California.
Well,
no pun intended.
And
literally,
I've never dug into hydrogen. Aren't there different colors of hydrogen?
There's green, blue, and brown.
Yeah,
and
this is brown hydrogen, which is
that's
methane
blue.
Steam
So methane reformation is the oldest process. It's dirty. You've got blue, which is made from natural gas, so it's a little better. And that's actually what all these big contracts in the Middle East is. They're actually producing blue hydrogen because they have a lot of natural gas. And then you have green hydrogen, which is
blue hydrogen easier to transport? Is that why you do that?
It's the same hydrogen. The end product's the same. It's just the
problem is you don't want to transport hydrogen. It's I mean, they're really it's really hard to compress.
So why
you want to make it on site if you could?
Is there a commercial demand for it? Why, if I'm in the Middle East with all this gas, am I not just building an LNG facility? Why would I turn it into hydrogen?
Because I think there's people. I mean, whenever there's a customer, there's a way, right? So I think there's people that are taking opportunistically the idea that if countries are going to prefer hydrogen, and clean hydrogen is going to sell at a higher price than brown, or blue is higher than brown, green's higher than blue, there's going to be people that are going to take risk and trade on that.
Well, as Bobby Tudor pointed out last fall, the epicenter of hydrogen infrastructure is right here in the Houston Gulf Coast area. So trying to get something in effect greenfielded in California is just an interesting anecdote. And, watching this story play out in terms of what kind of timeline delays we're ultimately going to be looking at. John's follow-up point was raising the issue of the Energy Permitting Reform Act, or at least implying that. And so, just stack that on top of the things like the Grain Belt Express transmission line, where Illinois, among 3 states, shut that down. We talked about the Ambler Mine Road in Alaska. So we've got to find a way, if we're actually going to get this stuff built, we got to find a way to, in a somewhat trite way, streamline the permitting process. Now John did also point out that, credit to them in terms of the opposition. They filed this thing a mere 3 weeks. So this debate is being engaged pretty quickly.
Well, I'm the big libertarian, and then, if I got to choose a second thing, then I'm a states' rights guy and all. But even I'm kind of getting to the point that I mean, if we want to seriously deal with energy type issues, we've got to have just some rules. And let's put some rules in place and make these things happen, because permitting's huge. I mean, it's gumming everything up. And at the end of the day, you're just going to use the old stuff in place.
Right. I want to go, and speaking of the old stuff and the old processes, going back to Kurt's keyword, talking about pyrolysis, which is heat. Steam reforming requires a lot of heat. Pyrolysis requires a lot of heat. And thermal sources are best, at least today, and for the foreseeable future, related to steam generation from things like methane, coal, et cetera, which, and this is on the, this is also on the dimension of the tug of war between that type of greenfield project and community prosperity and jobs opportunity as well. We're seeing that in the UK with the shutdown at the end of the month of one of Tata's remaining blast furnaces at a big multi-generational steel making facility in Wales.
Dogs and cats sleeping together. Mass hysteria. Exactly. So what happened at Climate Week?
You can ask Lindsay.
Yeah, she was there.
Yes.
She was there. She took a picture with the Clintons. So Jacob, why don't you pull up Lindsay's Instagram page? Lindsay L-E-L-L. She was there. She spoke. She actually spoke. So I'll get the report on Saturday, but you can put a picture up with Lindsay with Hillary and Bill, and I forget who else she took pictures with.
Chelsea.
There you go. Took some grief from it, you said. I didn't read the comments.
You don't have to read very far down in the comments to see the tone. We'd call that a ratio.
A ratio. So pending the here's the picture with Bill.
So I propose that you record a remote download that we can drop into next week's episode.
I'll ask her what happened.
Climate Week summary. I'm curious to know.
At the Clinton Global Initiative. Yeah, I will ask Lindsay for her download.
Awesome.
So what's your take on it?
So Climate Week is in New York. It runs in parallel or concurrently with the UN General Assembly, and
of course it does.
It attracts that dynamic. Not quite sure the timing. I think President Biden speaks this afternoon or tonight, and one headline was, the chance to seal his climate legacy. My read of it is, and what I've gleaned from the things that I've read so far, is there seems to be a pretty significant agenda focus on what came out of COP28, which was the tripling of renewables by 2030. And, currently 4%, or I think just under 4% of the global installed base is quote unquote renewables. The target is around 11%. Mm-hmm. And what the IEA has basically chimed in here and said leads to kind of the pace that we're on is going to fall short, and that will be about 8% of the goal, or 8% of the total by 2030. And the cross current here from a political standpoint is you have, the age old question of who's going to fund this stuff. And it's really a debate or across the table conversation from developed world to developing world. We've fallen short of the $100 billion a year climate pledge run rate, guaranteed loans from developed world banks, low cost guaranteed loans to really push key developing countries into what I think is more or less a leapfrog in their kind of energy growth and prosperity.
I think this drives me nuts. Like, we're all in some ways imperialist at the end of the day. Like, we want our own sovereign nation to be as strong as possible, and I don't want to handicap it to help someone else. However, most business guys and gals, like look at Mexico, like they leapfrog telecommunications by going to mobile because of the infrastructure. That's going to happen. Energy policy will leapfrog in countries because it makes sense. And there's entrepreneurs out there saying, hey, we have an opportunity here. But this whole idea of handicapping stronger nations because we have a leg up, it's just total bullshit. Total bullshit. I mean, why would you hurt yourself to help someone else? You don't. And what do they tell you in airplanes? If there's a loss in cabin pressure, what do you do?
Put your mask on first.
Put your mask on first.
Put your mask on first. So we need to put your mask on first policy. And I'm not talking COVID mask. I'm talking oxygen mask. That's the policy we need to be hammering down. And I just think this is crazy stuff. I know it's politics, so everyone acts as if it's really a big deal. But I've never seen anyone genuinely, besides Mother Teresa, there's a few people that are willing to self-sacrifice. But you don't do that to a sovereign nation. You wouldn't do it to your own child. You wouldn't say, hey, because Chuck is, El Gringo, I have a jet. I've got Teslas. I've got every car imaginable. I've got houses. You would never go to your child, Chuck, and say, look, I'm going to hurt your education to help someone that didn't have as good as you. You would never do that.
Yeah.
You're going to say, I want to give you the best opportunity. And I hope I treat you well enough and love you well enough to love others. But you still need to put the mask on yourself.
Well, and I love that point, and take it kind of one step further. If you truly are committed to doing that, you do it yourself. You don't go, I'm going to use the threat of government and throwing people in jail to impose this upon everyone. I am going to give up my jet. I'm going to give up my big house because I believe in this. I believe that the oceans are rising, so I'm not going to pay $15 million for a house right there on the coast. You lead by example. I mean, that's what all the great
I can't give up the
do.
jet, though, because I'm important. I have to go places, man. That's the argument. It's like, no, you don't understand.
Chuck's
important.
already set the example.
Yeah, I gave up the jet.
But it'll come back. We all hope it does. For Instagram's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. I told somebody the other day, the world's just a much better place when I'm rich. It just really is. So I'm very benevolent, generous with the money.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. There seems to also be, they had this flurry of elation coming out of COP28. They've got this agreement among 200 countries to triple renewables, but starting to maybe try to turn down the excitement on what's coming up at COP29, which is going to be in Azerbaijan. Clearly they don't have the infrastructure to handle what happened in Dubai, and maybe a sense of relief that, well, we got something done on paper in terms of an agreement. The action's the hard part. Mm-hmm, so the pressure is going to be on, to continue to, coming from Climate Week and the UN General Assembly meeting. I forget when COP28 is. I think it's in February or March.
Did y'all ever read the Real Man's Handbook?
Nope.
From the 70s. I'll see if I can find copies of it. I wonder if it's still in print. It was Real Men Don't Eat Quiche. That's where the line came from. And one of the great things in there, this guy was a truck driver named Crush something, or I can't remember.
Crush.
I can't remember what his name
Crash
was.
Davis.
But he was talking about all these things on the planet, and one of his things about the UN was, aside from creating a marginally attractive holiday card, what has the UN actually done? There you go.
Yeah. So the real kicker here is this grand vision has got an annual price tag associated with it that starts in the trillions. So,
of course,
those are meaningful numbers.
And what's the United States portion of that, percentage-wise? Probably higher than everyone else.
Yeah,
I know how this works.
Similar to what we support NATO, maybe.
There was another great thing in the Real Man's Handbook. It had two guys that are obviously not American at the UN going, it's always so great to come here and call them capitalist pigs and make them pay for the whole thing.
As y'all know, I just we shot a reality television show last week, and a couple of our producers just moved to Texas from California. So I was curious, why did you move here? Why'd you move back move to Texas? And their answer was because burgers in California are $19 and I can get a burger here for $6 or $7. As I explored more about why do you think that is, it never got past that piece. There was never insight into why are burgers $19. And they said this, because everyone wants to be in California. So that's interesting because there's more people fleeing California than moving into California. Total blank. Yep. Totally don't understand. You don't get it. Everyone wants to be in Hollywood and LA. I was like, sure, but they're all moving. Why is that?
Yeah, all things equal, would you choose California weather or Texas weather?
California, surfing. My skin would probably look like I was George Hamilton. I eat better, probably. I mean, I'd pick California for sure.
Plus the movie business, way cooler than the energy business. And I'm energy loud, energy proud, but man, I'd much rather be in Hollywood than
Hollywood
Midland.
Fun, energy not fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in a somewhat related, at least observation on the climate week and energy politics, I was doom scrolling early this morning and came across a video from usafacts.org, which is, I didn't know about this, was launched 7 years ago. Steve Ballmer has a data and research arm that covers a pretty broad spectrum of issues from climate, energy to the economy, immigration, crime, et cetera. And they source only publicly available official government data.
Okay.
Put a team of, great analysts and researchers and guys that do a really good job with visualization. So this piece that I saw was on really the fundamentals of energy supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was very well done. I mean, here you've got, depending on your rankings list, the 7th or 10th richest guy on the planet whose peers are not at all hesitant to invoke their particular politics and influence. Very explicit about, look, our mission is to present the data, the best data we have available, most critically reviewed. And I thought it did a really good job from a generalist standpoint to break it down into supply, demand, and then the environment.
Okay.
In explaining things at a very basic level, but I also thought a very effective level in getting people's attention to really understand the basics of the physics of supply and demand. So we'll attach both usafacts.org link and then this 14-minute piece that Steve Ballmer did. I haven't reviewed anything beyond that, but I think that's in all of this intersection of the physical realities of energy and energy policy and just the sheer politics that we're seeing all over the place and the friction that is not helpful to anyone. The basic absorption and osmosis of learning some important facts about energy. The disclaimer or the tagline is, we present the facts, you decide. Sounds like an old Fox News tagline, but
they'll see you if you write that down. So be careful.
Yeah, we report, you decide.
Yeah, it was just it surprised. Kind of rolled my eyes. Well, here's another big tech legend out talking about energy and the environment, and it's actually a pretty refreshing alternative. And, I was telling Chuck, most people don't. Well, we produce way more hydrocarbon oil and natural gas than we consume now as a country, yet we're still net importers. Well, why is that? Well, we all know because there's distinctions among grades of crude and refining complex, and there's a whole value arbitrage globally, and it's a global market, et cetera. But it addresses that, I think, at a very understandable and consumable level. And those are the basic elements of getting the population and, importantly, the electorate more informed in terms of, okay, what works and what doesn't. Why are we doing things like saying, well, we're completely energy independent, but why are we exporting stuff? And why are we still a net importer of things? Well, here's why.
I tried to get, I applied to the press office to try to get RFK Jr. to come on Chuck Yates Needs a Job, and didn't get it. But it would be interesting, not to embarrass the politicians, but just like, go through kind of the rhetoric and just say, hey, that's not exactly true. I get what you're saying, and I think it's also healthy that the business we know so well, energy, if the politicians are that wrong about it, are they any more right about medical and the other stuff? Probably not. So
well,
we ought to be healthy cynicism on all fronts.
USAFacts.org also has a program that is agreed to in a bipartisan fashion and has been approved by the Congressional Ethics Committee, that there is training provided by USAFacts.org on all these issues, presenting the data the way they do, and completely, nothing's completely apolitical, but in a basic data foundation, getting people educated on really the underpinnings of the policy analysis that they're ultimately doing for all of our representatives. And I just think it's a good unfiltered way to get smarter about energy at a fundamental level for everybody.
So Wednesday on Chuck Yates Needed a Job, I have Paul Clark on, and we really got into the whole thing of natty and nukes and my whole thing about the natural gas guys need to be talking straight to big tech, because big tech, I think it's becoming even way more evident, is just going to choose nukes. And, you get into, well, permitting stuff, all this, and it's like, well, if big tech wants to get something, they usually get it. They've got a lot of money. They got a lot of pull. So it's actually a pretty fascinating episode. Sounds like we got Mark Rossano joining us next Monday, which will be cool. He's great. And then I'll see if Lindsay will record something so we can get her take on Climate Week.
I mean, as you've seen, like the 14 biggest banks this week all started supporting nuclear energy. Yeah. So you're seeing some interesting things come out, and it's a sort of almost a about face. So we need to unpack that as well next week. Sounds like we got a lot of great programming coming up. So there we go. I think if you're listening, stay tuned. Got more coming. Chuck Yates Needs a Job. Have we eclipsed Chuck Yates yet?
You know what's interesting is, so Mark and I recorded last week BDE, and we
Chuck Yates,
and we released it on both channels. And BDE is actually out downloading Chuck Yates Needs a Job. That I think that's the first time it's ever happened.
Well, if RFK goes on Chuck Yates, I'm totally going to download that episode.
We couldn't get him on.
Reading his controversial book right now.
Are you?
Only 2.5 chapters.
Hopefully not the audio version, because I couldn't listen to him do that for a long time.
I think he's a pretty charismatic dude, but to have the smoking hot reporter send you nudes all night long to the point you have to block her.
What?
Oh, y'all haven't heard this?
No.
So, I'm blanking on her.
Wait. Let's do this after the show. Let's wrap this thing up. What's our action for our listeners? Download Chuck Yates. Next week's going to be stellar.
No, we got to talk
Check
about
out
this on the
usafacts.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to talk about this real quick on the show. Olivia Nuzzi, who is a really, really good-looking reporter, and she wrote for New York Magazine. She did a profile on RFK Jr., and she basically got suspended because she was having a relationship with RFK Jr. And it's turning out that the relationship was sexting, and she was sending him nudes and all kinds of graphic stuff. And she was engaged to be married, and the fiance called off the wedding. Y'all haven't been following this?
No. See, it sounds like you need to go on TMZ again.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
Maybe she could hang out with Laura Loomer, who just got banned from the Trump campaign.
the Trump plane.
Allegedly.
So that's been the big thing. So dude's got, 70-year-old, got a lot of charisma if the 31-year-old's sending all the nudes.
Wow.
So there you go.
Well, we're going to have to squeeze in Chuck's notes from the music tour, the mini music tour you find yourself on this weekend.
Yeah. So potentially the Lips. So Jack Ingram is actually headlining the Shiner tour. So I'll see Lindsay and then
say hi to Jack for me.
Watch Jack Ingram. Little bit of trivia. The reason I know Lindsay L is Jack Ingram's former tour manager, Jordan Powell, introduced me to Lindsay. And Jordan was Jack's tour manager, I think, for 8 or 9 years.
Not that you couldn't get that done by yourself.
Well, you never know.
Jack's cool, dude. I like Jack.
Yeah, he's great. I've seen Jack, I don't know.
I play golf with his brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right, guys.
All righty.
Good week.
I'm a little sensitive. The comments about 2 grumpy old men and their program got to me a little, but
program is the tell.
Yes, exactly. If you enjoyed the show, please forward it to a friend, leave comments, but try to be nicer than that. You can make fun of Colin, but not me.
I can handle it. Just send them. Come on.
There we go. See y'all next week.
Cheers.